My name is Richard August, and I'll be your host. Our guest is Ashley Kalus, who is the Republican candidate for governor this year. Welcome to State of the State.
Thank you for having me.
I must begin by mentioning that we invited Governor McKee to be interviewed individually or to debate Mrs. Kalus several times. His campaign has either ignored or declined our invitations. I'd like to note also that the governor has been invited by Mrs. Kalus's campaign to debate her 4 times. How does that stand? Are you going to debate the governor?
We have some agreed upon debates, but I think that before early voting, it would have been nice to have more. So I'm sorry he didn't agree, but I'm here and I'm happy to be here.
So you'll have one before the voting season starts and then 2 more as a run-up to the election?
So far, yes.
Okay.
And people deserve to hear from candidates. It's part of democracy. So I really wish that he would have agreed to more, or will agree to more, but before voting is really important. But we have one.
Okay. The McKee campaign and political action committees are emphasizing that you're a political newcomer to Rhode Island in the political scene. Tell our audience a bit about yourself and why you decided to run for the office.
Yes, so I am an outsider. I have never run for political office before, and I think that that's a good thing. I'm a businesswoman. I built a business from 2 people to a multi-million-dollar business across multiple states over time, and I'm also a mom of 3 school-age boys. I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 7-year-old. I live in Newport with my husband and my children, and I'm running for office because I believe that we can do better. This is a small state with big problems, but the problems are fixable. They're a matter of political will. And if you have the right leader, somebody with vision and also substance, the ability to get things done, we can move into a new era in Rhode Island where we don't have failing schools, where we have an economy that is broad-based and working for everyone. But it's going to take change, and it's going to take a change in leadership.
Your campaign, at least the early ads, featured your 3 lovely boys, and they were certainly effective. It also showed you either sparring or punching the heavy bag, and you kept saying, I'm a fighter. Tell our audience what you think you have to fight for.
Well, I am a fighter. I'll tell you where that came from. I won the Golden Gloves in 2001 at Lowell, and it was incredible. I love boxing. I don't box anymore. I still practice. I don't spar, though, which is fighting. I'll do like the mitts. But really, the fight is for the fight of the future of Rhode Island. It's a fight to make sure that we get education reform done. We have attempted to do so, but nobody has actually done that. And what that means is that we're trapping children in failing schools. It's also a fight to make sure that Rhode Island is an affordable place to live, work, and raise a family. These are doable things. Yes, they're big things, but it does take somebody who is going to challenge the status quo and make sure that they're doing the right thing for Rhode Island.
The day before we are taping this interview, Mrs. Kalus was on WPRI Channel 12 being interviewed, I should almost say grilled, by investigative reporters Tim White and Ted Nesi. A good part of the interview involved this plan to fix what ails public education in Rhode Island. And you said the plan is up on your campaign website, but I checked this morning and I couldn't find it. Is it up there yet?
It was up there even when I was in the interview. You know what I'll do is I'll make sure that you have the link, and I'll make sure that our navigation is okay as well, because it is up there. I can go through the plan if you'd like, though.
Well, yeah. I would like to, exactly, that's what I'd like to do, is talk a little bit about that, because you said it's a long-range plan, but also we have to look at a shorter-term solution. So go ahead, take your time.
So there are 2 components. Is that we need to look to Massachusetts, because Massachusetts is the model of a turnaround, and that's what we need in the state, is an educational turnaround. They went into education reform and they actually got it done. So in the long term, we need to commit to education reform, which will be an 8-year plan. We need to have high standards, which means we need to end high stakes end of the year testing and move to progress-based testing. And what progress-based testing does is it allows us to see where an individual child is in a transparent way, so teachers and parents can get involved during, when a child needs it, not just at the end of the year, so that we can make sure that if a child's struggling with reading, we provide an intervention in the middle of the year. We also need to pay our teachers more. We're not regionally competitive when it comes to teacher pay. We also need to level the playing field, which means reforming the school funding formula, and also close gaps what we see is that COVID learning loss is real. And what we saw is we had federal funds to address learning loss. In Providence, for example, we had $120 million. $20 million approximately went to teacher bonuses, and I don't mind paying teachers more. The bigger problem is $100 million is still sitting there not being used for individualized tutoring or to close those gaps. And the big thing is closing those gaps. That was an urgent need. It should not be sitting there. We should already have individualized tutoring. And then we need to be flexible, because one size does not fit all. So Davies is a great example. It's a technical training school that ends up with kids that have high-paying jobs, and it's academic excellence as well. We need a Davies in every county. So that's a long-term education reform plan. But the reality is, right now, we have children that are trapped in failing schools. So we need to make sure that education is a constitutional right. I'm not sure if folks are aware of the fact, but in Rhode Island, a quality education is not a constitutional right. And it needs to be, because that allows for parents to ensure that if their child is not getting a quality education, they have recourse against the state or recourse against the district. If you don't have that, you have no ability to protect your child. The other thing is public school choice, because you cannot tell a 5-year-old in the long-term project of education reform, which is what we really do need to do, that it's going to take 7 or 8 years until we get it fixed for them. That is trapping a child in a failing school, saying, hey, wait until middle school. We cannot do that. And so what public school choice allows us to do is take care of the individual child while we are looking to fix the larger systemic issue of failing schools through education reform. And public school choice means that if your child is trapped in a failing school, you can look within the district first, and we will provide transportation, then within the county, and then in a broader based way based on availability.
I was kind of amazed when you said the teachers in Providence received $20 million in bonuses. Do you know what those bonuses were based on? It's just my background in business. You didn't get a bonus if you were failing, and if the schools are failing. What were the bonuses based on?
You know, COVID has been teaching, and I empathize with teachers, because teachers are also parents sitting there with Zoom trying to teach a class and teach their kids at the same time. So while I understand the sentiment for some teachers that are not performing, a lot of teachers are actually very, very good in Providence. There are a ton of great teachers, and the system has let teachers and parents down. And there are steps that we can take to make sure that teachers are supported. Part of that is high quality professional development. But in terms of the $120 million and the part going to teachers, my big issue is the fact that that money was supposed to go directly to children to close COVID learning loss gaps. And the longer it stays there sitting, waiting to be dispersed, not being put into action, the more children suffer. And that is a lack of leadership on behalf of the governor. Because if I were governor at the time, I would make sure that if we are giving money, we are making sure that we are able to implement plans and help children right away. And it is representative of the lack of leadership in the governor's office.
Of course, Providence schools are being run by the education commissioner.
Yes.
If you were elected governor, would you keep her in that job, or would you seek a replacement?
I have said that I would expect everyone to resign, all of the cabinet members, and then they can reapply for their jobs based on their performance, and they would be evaluated based on their performance and their qualifications. I am not impressed right now with where Providence is, but I would want to be fair, and will assess everyone individually. But I think we should have done better by now.
So you would take a business approach to evaluating the people who report to you?
Correct. I would be fair. I think that Rhode Island deserves a leader that is fair and that is not political in that way. Mm-hmm. That's what leadership is. If you want to be a transformative leader, you need to make sure that you hire people based on what they know, not who they know, and that you assess people based on what they've done.
I believe during the interview on Channel 12, I heard you say that you would allow students in failing schools to switch to schools in another district and bring with them the average cost for that district, so that there would be a way to fund this child going into a new district. Am I correct so far?
Yeah, and that's if they need to. So we would start with in-district transfers. And this is something that is done across the country very successfully. So this isn't a new model. We're actually behind the fact that we don't have institutionalized public school choice. And so they would start within the district. If there's no availability or not a suitable school, you move to the county, and then outside of that area. So that would be the model. And I think that there is also a level of fear that comes with that is not warranted, as everybody thinks, oh, the schools will empty out. That empirically is not something that happens. The way that we handle or need to handle failing schools is by providing them with more support. And that is what was done in Massachusetts. So when there was a failing school, the state didn't abandon the school. The state actually offered more support, offered more funding, more assistance, more help. That's why I take exception with the term of the Providence takeover, because already there you're signaling that you're asserting something over the whole school system, and you're going to come in as the office of the governor and take over. What I am looking for is a partnership with Providence to fix the schools. Language matters, and takeover is the wrong word. With me, you will get a partner, and Providence will have a partner and somebody that is dedicated to working together to turn around that school system.
You said, and during that interview also, you had like a tagline that said, if there is space available, you'd say, so I guess that you understand that the teachers' unions are politically powerful in the state, and that most contracts have a defined student-teacher ratio in each classroom. So I guess my question when I heard you say that is, if a person goes from, I don't know, let's just pick Central Falls to East Greenwich, and the child is a non-English speaking student, so East Greenwich looks at it and says, well, we don't have any room, because if we take this person in, we have to hire an ESL teacher and rebalance the classrooms throughout the day. So, I mean, how do you do that without saying to them, you must take this student? How do you get the teachers union and the administration to go along with it?
Well, schools do know their capacity, and so I don't think that we would necessarily see that. There's capacity, there's not in different schools. They know how many seats are available. What would happen if children moved into the district, right? And so really this fear that schools will empty out is a way that special interest groups prevent public school choice. And what I would say is, if you have a 5-year-old that is trapped in a failing school, what are you going to tell that 5-year-old? Sorry, there's no chance for you. There's no room. We will figure it out. We can figure it out within the district first, and we know if there are seats available or not. Then we move broader, and then we move even broader. So I do think that there's a lot of fear around this, but if we look at what's happened around the country, it's just not supported. The other thing that I would say is that a school turnaround involves parents, it involves a principal with autonomy, and it involves teachers. And there is a lot of work that goes into turning around the school, and a community is built around the school when it is done correctly. And there's a lot of energy and effort that goes into that. And often those schools end up being excellent schools. So this idea that everybody's going to leave rather than work together to fix the school is not true. And the state's responsibility is to provide funding to make sure that that happens, provide funding, expertise, resources. And we can do that. We have an obligation to do that to that 5-year-old that is trapped in a failing school. We have an obligation to turn around that school.
Change topics. As you know, Governor McKee seems to be a little tone deaf when he's talking about increasing the pay of his department heads by over 40%, I guess.
43 or something.
43, yeah, who's arguing, right?
Maybe, yeah.
But I mean, these people are making 6-figure incomes already, and I think I heard actually as I drove over here to the studio that his office came out and said, well, these would be incremental increases, they wouldn't happen all at once, and we need to do this to attract people to these jobs. I guess my question would be, do you agree with that? And if so, I mean, some of the jobs are very difficult to fill. I would agree. For example, people who need a medical degree to be head of DCYF or have a professional designation. But the other jobs seem to be filled okay.
Yeah.
At the salary levels they have.
Right.
So why do you have to pump up people by 43%?
Yeah, you don't. And let's put this in context in terms of what that means. That would mean in one position a $60,000 raise when the median household income in Providence is $49,000 a year. So this is just showing how out of touch he is and how he really doesn't care about working people. It's not, I mean, it's tone deaf, it's insensitive, and it shows that he is not in touch with what's going on in the ground. Families are just getting crushed. The other part that I'd like to mention is that he said that it was incremental, and then the next day he realized that he was wrong. And so we pointed it out to him, or I don't know if he reads our stuff, I assume he does, but he actually thought it was incremental. And then in the public record today, he said, oh, I misunderstood. I mean, you deserve a governor who's competent and honest. And I don't know which bucket either he got caught and doesn't want to be honest with what he actually wanted, or if he's completely incompetent. It doesn't matter. Rhode Islanders deserve someone that is both honest and competent. And that's what you'll get with me, is someone who really is in touch with what's going on. I have been able to have private conversations with people because I want to make sure that I'm actually able to transform the state in the way that I want to. And part of that is making sure that you have a team around you. So of course I've started to have those conversations. And never once has it ever come up that salary is a true issue. And so really the issue is with Dan McKee's leadership. People don't want to continue working with him, and he can't recruit people. You know, the governor before him didn't have that problem with that level of salary. So it's really a Dan McKee thing more than it is a true competitiveness recruiting thing.
I was talking with a member of the legislature who happens to be a Democrat this weekend, who said the ads claiming Governor McKee is responsible for things such as eliminating the municipal excise tax on motor vehicles is ridiculous, because it was a legislative initiative that he had nothing to do with. Do you agree with that assessment? Do you think he's taking credit for things that he really didn't have anything to do with?
Yeah, ask Matty Hello. I mean, he can't take credit away from him. I mean, yes, that is actually true. So that was not his accomplishment. And what we see is a pattern of behavior. When it's good for him, he wants to take credit for other people's work. But then when it's bad for him, he wants to say, well, that has nothing to do with me. And that is, you know, it is a character problem. It is a leadership problem.
With representatives of the anti-gun lobby standing proudly by his side, Governor McKee signed what he calls 3 pieces of gun safety legislation in his last session, including an absolute ban on ammunition feeding devices that hold more than 10 bullets, possession of which after January 1st would subject the person to 2 years in prison and up to $2,000 fine. What is your position on the Second Amendment, which is a controversial topic at the present?
Yeah, I support the Second Amendment. I support the Constitution. I believe that law matters. And the thing that I want to talk about is the fact that we have a serious issue with public safety and mental health. And it is, you know, sometimes easier to pass bills than it is to do the hard work. We have a mental health crisis. We need to fund our mental health services. We need to make sure that we can train and recruit people into this field and also retain them. In terms of safety, we should have, you know, school resource officers in every school to implement the safety plans. So I think he, in this, is missing the bigger, broader problem of safety and mental health. We have a mental health crisis coming, and we have this wave coming, and our infrastructure, our health infrastructure from that is in tatters. And that is something that we should be talking about a lot more.
If you become governor, would you sign or veto a bill that bans the so-called assault weapons or military-style weapons?
So with the magazine, do you mind if I go to the magazine one as well? Because I didn't get to finish what I was saying, and it was my own fault. So I would have vetoed that bill because it was completely unconstitutional. And that bill will not be upheld. And so what we see is a governor who signs, he should know that is going to turn law-abiding citizens into felons overnight. And if he doesn't know, I don't know who's advising him, but he should know, and he should have vetoed that bill with that in mind, because if you support the Constitution, then you should support the Constitution. So you should not sign bills that you know are unconstitutional.
Time is really flying by. I've got 3 pages of notes here, so
I'm sorry,
please,
I'll be faster.
You take as much time as you need to answer the question to your satisfaction. I want to go on to the subject of the Dobbs decision that the Supreme Court handed down, sending abortion back to the states. And as you know, Rhode Island codified the Roe decision in 2019, and there was a bill before the legislature that would provide access to abortion for state employees under the health insurance plan and for Medicaid recipients. It didn't pass last session, but clearly there is movement with supporters to introduce it again this time. And you said, I believe, that you are pro-life, but as governor, you would uphold the law, whatever the law is, and certainly in Rhode Island, you know what the law is under the codification of Roe.
Yes.
What is your position on that? You have a private feeling about abortion, but you would uphold the law. So could you just explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So the right to an abortion was codified in state law in 2019. I will do nothing to change the law. The law is the law. And so I think it's really important that I'm clear, because in politics, often another side will try to distort what you say. So I try to say it as clearly as possible. The law is the law. And let's be honest, is that in the last session, Governor McKee was a governor, and he didn't push forward taxpayer-funded abortion. So now he's doing that, now he's saying things about it when he didn't do it in the last session because there's not legislative support. And like the majority, 70% of Rhode Islanders, I do not support taxpayer-funded abortions. I would do nothing to change the law. The right to an abortion was codified in state law.
During the interview on Channel 12, I think you said that you would veto a budget that included taxpayer-funded abortion. Am I quoting you correctly?
So I said, if that got to me, and the reason that I said it was the thing I just alluded to, which is that there was not support in the last session for that, and there was opportunity, and when Dan McKee was in a primary, that was pointed out. So let's point out sort of where he was, and I do not believe there's legislative support to do that, or when they cared so much about it before, it could have been done in the last session, and it just was not done. But I do not support taxpayer-funded abortions.
Okay. What is your position on giving driving permits or licenses to people who are here illegally because they overstayed their visa or came illegally into the country? Should they have these driver's licenses or permits?
Yeah, permit is very different between license and a permit. Actually, it's a really good distinction, because I would say that when I talk about looking to models that work, or I do think as a state we should look around the country and come up with we should be informed by public policies that work very well in different places. And Governor Baker, while it didn't end up happening the way he wanted, had a really good policy when it came to dealing with the balance between making sure that something was a permit and there were public safety and national security was respected in giving out permits, and not endangering public safety when it came to not knowing who someone was. So what his original bills looked to, which was using consulate information to verify identity, that ended up not going through. But I do support a permit, not something that can be confused for voting, in order to ensure that cars are insured, right? So that some people get insurance so they're not driving cars in an uninsured manner because they can't get a license, so that in some ways we can ensure public safety. So we can do something that is a balance between ensuring public safety, making sure that national security and public safety in terms of identification is kept, and also protecting voter integrity. We can walk and chew gum at the same time as a state. So we can deal with all these varying interests. It just takes a leader that can speak to the different interests and come up with a solution for everyone.
The Providence Journal, I want to clarify one thing that I saw in the newspaper. They announced that you registered to vote in Rhode Island on March 23rd this year, which was the same day you announced for governor. Is that correct?
I don't know what the dates are. I will tell you what I've been doing in Rhode Island for a while. So I was working on the front lines of COVID testing and vaccine. And my priority, first and foremost, was for the safety of Rhode Island. So every day I would wake up and make sure that the one thing I cared about was helping make Rhode Island the most vaccinated state in the country, and then also trying to protect our testing infrastructure and provide those services. So my priority and my goal was to never go into politics. My priority then was to just protect the state I love, and so that's what I was doing, and really. What my focus was. I never expected to run for governor or to be in politics, but this state deserves leadership. It deserves someone that is not beholden to anyone other than the people of Rhode Island, and someone that can make the changes that are required to fix the education system and fix the economy. We deserve true, competent leadership, and you do not get that with Dan McKee.
This morning's Providence Journal, in the political scene column, I'm sure you saw it, they're making a big deal about a five-year-old article in a local newspaper in Key West, Florida, talking about the homestead exemption you had in Illinois when you were living in Florida. Do you want to clarify that whole business? I mean, it seems to be much ado about nothing.
Yeah, it's like a TMZ style stuff. So that was a number of years ago, and we've been very honest. In the last year, my husband had an obligation to patients in Chicago because of COVID. The ORs, they got very busy. Anybody who's had surgery knew they were backed up. And he had to take care of patients while transitioning. I've been in Rhode Island, and he had to finish up his patient care responsibilities. As a doctor, you have certain responsibilities to your patients. Sure. Unfortunately, sometimes over your family, which anyone in medicine will understand that there's always that tension. So he took care of his patients. He's with us now, but that is something that we've been transparent about.
Your husband is a plastic surgeon. I believe he specializes in children's reconstructive surgery?
He's a plastic and reconstructive surgeon. We met when he was training at Brown. He trained at Brown. He was at Rhode Island Hospital in Hasbro for 8 years. He's craniofacial trained, so cleft lips and palates and syndromic diseases. And then also, he's also a fellowship trained in hand as well. Okay. I'm very proud of him. He does really, he does great work. He's helped a lot in this community as well. We started a nonprofit comedy blast in Rhode Island that helps children with craniofacial anomalies in Peru. That started here, oh my goodness, I'm trying to think, it feels like 15 years ago. And it was started here, and the work continues on. And we're hoping that we're going to be able to go this year. It stopped 2 years because of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's certainly a very noble profession. And I mean, I just don't know how the plastic surgeons do some of the stuff they do. So, since you're not a medical person, were the senior executive for Doctors Testing Centers, which ran the COVID testing sites in Rhode Island. You've used the word vaccine a couple of times. The COVID, they're not really vaccines, are they? They are basically flu shots for COVID, the COVID virus.
I think there's still technically a vaccine,
okay.
But I think what you're alluding to is, the fact that people, need to get multiple boosters at this point.
And they still get COVID. Some of them. Some people do.
I got COVID for the first time, I think it was in July. No, I wasn't going to make an announcement right here. But, it was one of those things where I had been working very, it was just sort of shocking because I've been in testing and vaccine for so long, you start wondering. And so I ended up getting it myself, and I've been vaccinated and boosted, and it is what it is.
Would you believe that we are just about out of time? So I want to thank you very much for coming on State of the State. I hope the audience has enjoyed it, and I want to wish the Jewish members of our audience, Lashona Tov, a Happy New Year, 5783.
I'm Jewish. Thank you so much.
Well,